Oh, no. There we go. Now we're live. So I'll let John put on his headphones here. So we're in week 4 of our Open Flip course on Flip Learning. And thank you very much for Kate Baker for joining us again. I think this is the 3rd time, and Kate has audio, so we can hear her this time. And John Bergman. It's great to have John here, live from Australia. And I'll just let you guys do your intro while we're starting up here. So John, go ahead and say hi.
Hi, I'm John Bergman, and exciting to be here. I'm in Australia. Just spent a week here sharing with Australian educators, and just some amazing stories. I've been meeting teachers here who are flipping their class, school that's flipped, universities. It's just been exciting to see. In fact, we just launched FlipCon Australia. We're going to do a FlipCon in Australia in October, and so a lot of buzz about that coming up. So pretty excited.
Sweet. That's excellent. Excellent.
Yay.
Kate, what's new with you?
I just got back from South by Southwest. I flew into that conference on Sunday, presented on digital reading on Monday, flew back out on Tuesday, and been back at school all this week. Our kids are park testing right now, the latest and greatest in standardized testing. But, yeah. Woo! So other than that, just we're immersed in the Odyssey right now with my freshmen, and the seniors are going through Hamlet, but trying to flip as best as we can with with Park taking all of our computer access away. So I've had to go back to old school paper. Like look at my desk. Look at that. Ew, the papers! They're coming to get me. But
oh my. Well,
yeah,
that's no fun.
oh my.
That's no fun at all.
Yeah.
So speaking of paper, Kate, there was a cool thing that happened last week. Last week, I think it was. I was in Irapuato, one of our campuses, and one of my colleagues, I guess, wasn't paying attention to what I was saying during the lecture. So he took, we all know the 4 pillars of Flip Learning, and while we were there, he translated it to Spanish for us.
Oh,
so we have a Spanish version of the 4 pillars. It's actually available on fliplearning.org. Chris put up the link just the other day, yesterday I think. So that's really cool. We have the 4 pillars translated to Spanish. And if it's not in your language, go ahead and translate it and share that with everyone else.
You know, it has been translated, those 4 pillars, into quite a few different languages. So, so Spanish is not the first one. I don't have the list. I know Chris, my wife, who's in charge of all that stuff, has a list somewhere of the different translations. So
excellent. We'll have to get it up. And if ours is not well translated, I think the link that Chris gave is to the actual Google Doc. So if people want to make corrections, go ahead. Or if they just want to take a copy of the version we made with Ruben Moreno, they can take ours and then template it off and create their own. Maybe they're going to do it in Spanish, Spain style as opposed to Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
Speaking of Spain, you know that Kristen Daniels is in Spain right now.
Ooh,
no.
She's speaking at a conference about flipped classrooms. So it actually invited Aaron and I, but both of us were committed this week. So
exactly.
Kristen got the Spain trip, so pretty awesome.
You're about to fly, and Aaron's just flying home as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Kate pinged him earlier to see if he could make it.
Yeah, yeah. He's
excellent.
At airports.
Excellent. So we are on Flip Pillar 4, Professional Educator. What can you say? So one thing I found interesting, John, we had Brian Bennett on when we were talking about flexible environment, and actually it was myself, Kate was there, Andrew Thomason was there, and I'm trying to remember who was the other person that was there. Kate, if you can remind me, that was the day you couldn't speak because you were silenced. Oh well.
Yeah, it was Andrew, and it was and Brian and
someone I hadn't met before. That's the first time I met her. But anyway, I'll get it back later. But Brian mentioned that the flexible environment was really about the classroom setup, whereas myself and especially Andrew were talking much more about how we view flexible environment in a different way in terms of communication and everything else that we could think of with flexible. And so I learned something that day. What could you tell us about Professional Educator?
So in terms of Professional Educator, I really see this as I mean, you know, it's about good teaching, and that means you got to connect with others. So it's a lot of it's about the connections, the kind of things we're doing right now, being involved somehow in larger communities, and that larger community could be the person next door, by the way. You know, the teacher next door. That's usually the best community. if you have that ability. But I think there's a lot of power in reaching out through social media, etc., to expand your process. And I think really part of this is also about just being a reflective teacher.
Right.
As you're a professional educator, you're going to look back and say, boy, that did not go so well today. And why didn't it go so well? I don't know, I think that's where it's nice to have the peer network with other teachers to say, I made this flipped lesson and it sucked. what did I do wrong? I just commented on a post on the Schoology. They've got a group there, and I post there occasionally. And somebody just asked a question this morning. He said, "My kids are not watching the video, and every day I'm forced to just re-lecture." And so I politely said, but I'm really glad this teacher reached out and said, "Let me give you a couple of suggestions." And so he reached out. He had his community on Schoology, the board on Flipped Classroom, and he was reflecting on how his lessons have not been going so well. And people gave him some really good advice. I did as well, I hope, and I hope that this helped him. So it's really about this sort of, getting help when you're stuck, and the reflective process, etc. Another good example of this is I think Crystal. You've met Crystal Kirch before, and Crystal's awesome because she reflects just right out there on her blog.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Things don't
I've
go well.
shown that to our class.
And so
She's
I think
great.
So just that kind of idea. I mean, I don't think everybody has to write a blog that thousands of people read. I don't think that's realistic. But I think what she's mirroring for all of us is this reflective piece that, as educators, we need to always be about. What went well, what didn't go well. Somehow, have that process in place, and then find somebody who can help you with the reflection. I believe that's really powerful.
Excellent. Yeah, I shared Crystal's page with my group here in this course 3 weeks ago when we were doing the first pillar, and Crystal joined us that evening. So I definitely pointed out that they should take a look at her weekly reflections from 2011, 12, and 12, 13, I believe. What about you, Kate? Go ahead.
When you think about it, so often we think of the word professional and expert are synonymous.
Right.
And really, they are two different words. Like, we know our content, and we can be experts in our content, but at the same time, to be a professional doesn't mean that you have to be the expert all the time. So I think that's a really important piece of that reflection in your professional world, that you're taking that time to always get better and not just be stagnant. Because so often it's like, oh, well, I'm the expert, I'm done. I don't, but yet it's not learning alongside everyone. So that's still professional. And I think that mindset is still emerging, that, Carol Dweck's growth mindset. For a lot of teachers, many, traditionalists are stuck in that, well, I'm supposed to be the expert, I can't give up that weakness, and to say I don't know something. But I think it's a very professional quality to say, no, I don't know everything, and I need to go learn more.
Another guy who's done some really cool stuff now.
Breaking up a whole bunch, Kate. It's either you breaking up or me. You still there, John?
Yeah, she was fine for me.
Okay, cool. That was probably just me.
Let me add something, Ken, that I think is piggyback on what she said. Is what Kate said that I think was really powerful. Is that this whole reflective piece that we need to have. I think we also need to instill in our students. And so an example of this would be actually Tom Driscoll's got just some really exciting stuff that I'm seeing happening. What Tom is doing is his students. He's in a flipped master classroom, but they do their flip. They watch their video at home, and they do activities in class, and they eventually take a test on the subject. But then he's added a third piece that's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What his kids do is, he says, at the end of every sort of major objective tied to Common Core state standards, is they have to write a reflective piece on what they learned, how they learned it, how they would learn it differently, etc. So they've got like a one-page paper they do at the end of each sort of major block of unit that they do, and then at the end of the semester, what he's having the students do is write a reflection of the reflections, because he says he's got roughly 20 objectives he covers in a semester, so half a year. And so they're going to have a summary of these 20 objectives that they're going to have written reflections on. And it's going very well for him. It's just that getting that metacognitive piece there, not just for us as teachers, but also instilling this in his kids. I was just so impressed with this. This is a real new idea I talked with him just recently about.
I've got my kids doing the same thing. Maybe not each of the objectives, but whenever we turn in an assignment through an Odo, the students have to put in, they have to explain to me, well, what did they think they did well on? What did they think they could have improved on? What would they have done differently? What did they learn? Is there anything else they want to do? So whenever I ask them to submit something, like and they attach their file, they attach their link, I still make them do that small reflective piece. So we're doing that constantly all the time, which I think that's really important to build that habit through frequency.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally.
So what do you got for us, Ken, on questions or anything?
My sound got really bad there.
Ooh.
We can still hear you just fine. Well, at least I can still hear you just fine.
See if I can hear it now. Hold on. Sorry.
Well, Kate, you and I can chat, so.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. There, now I can hear. I think it was my Bluetooth headphones just freaking out. So I assumed everything was fine with you guys. So
We were hearing totally fine, so.
Excellent. Good. So the recording's fine. Actually, Kate brought up something really interesting there about us always being the experts and professional educator. A few things came up on Wednesday night with my discussion with colleagues. One was professional educator isn't just the fact that I've studied education. So that kind of came up, and we ran around that. But another one came up that I thought was interesting, a question from Memo Perez. He said, what about that fear factor of, because I flipped my classroom, my students are growing out, and even some of them are professionals in their field. They're almost graduating, and they know more than I do, or they're colleagues at work, and they're coming into class with basically expert opinions that I don't understand, and maybe I'm afraid to not have that control of what's going on in my classroom, and how you deal with that.
Well, what's the focus? Is the focus on the content, or
Right.
is the focus on the skills? So even if you don't maybe understand completely the content, you can still ask them to use the skill of reflection, use the skill of argument. Ask them to show you what you know, or find someone else to refute or support whatever they're bringing in as the expert.
Right.
I mean, so often we think that like content. That's the most important thing in the classroom when it's not. It's our students who are the most important thing. So if you as the professional, if you can give them a tool or say, okay, well that's really interesting, maybe I don't understand it, but where else could you go to get more? And try to just guide them in a direction.
Excellent. No, I think that's an excellent answer. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, I think she did a great job. Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it comes back to just this whole fear of control in a flipped class, of taking or letting go of control for the teacher. And right now, lately, I've had a real hard time with my students with getting them convinced to take control of their own learning. Because for most of them in my classes, I'm giving first semester computing, and it's all, I think maybe 1 out of 100 students have experienced this kind of taking control of your own education before. And they're just not used to it, and they're waiting for me to tell them exactly what to do.
I think the key to that is you have to be willing to give up control as an educator to some of the learning. And I still believe there's this tension where we do need to have teachers teach their stuff. Teachers are experts at their field, typically, and they know. Students don't know what they don't know, and we do. But then there's also this fear that I have to give up some control, and I think the answer is you should. So you need to give up some of the control, and as you do that, you release the learning to the kids. And but there's also training of kids that's important. Some kids are afraid of being given the control, and so it's a process of teaching the kids about how and why to flip a class. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just a balance is that we're looking for, and that came up with our discussion on Wednesday. Is someone said you can't be a mix of both. You either have to just completely control your classroom environment or let go of control completely and have your students grab it. And I was arguing there's like a bazillion shades of gray in between here, and you don't have to go either or on all of this. You're going to jump in, Kate, there. You're shaking your head.
No, I disagree with that it has to be either or.
Right.
You can be maybe as the professional you're in the background because you've set things up or orchestrated things ahead of time, you've designed the learning ahead of time, And then once you get in the classroom, then it's the students who do the heavy lifting. But the control is still there. It's just not overt because it looks like the students are doing everything. I think we always have control. It's just a matter if it's overtly visible or not. You know, and then with my freshmen especially, you know, I go through phases. We will flip, kind of mastery flip within chunks. I don't do the whole marking period like, woohoo, you have the whole marking period to do this. Because freshmen will get off task and they will get sidetracked. So instead of them always moving along, it's flipped within certain boundaries and within a framework. And then they have within that boundary, they have all the freedom they need within that time frame.
Yeah.
But by doing it in smaller chunks, like, and the control is still there all the time, but it's a matter of who's doing the heavy lifting of the learning.
Right. And I think it's also it's a straw man type argument. I had a discussion with someone from Edmonton actually. I saw them post something about problem-based learning just not working, and they were just I think what they're pointing out is bad teaching is bad teaching regardless. And they saw bad teaching and it was PBL, therefore PBL is bad. And I threw my comment in there about that, you know, if I'm going to give my students control, it isn't just, okay, you guys learn and I'm going to sit here and look at Facebook all day.
Yeah,
John?
well, I think a lot of people are doing that. Yeah, you can do flipped class wrong. You know, you can say, here's a video, go home, watch it, and then don't do anything in class. I've seen that happen, frankly. And it's a disaster. But you know, you can do a project-based learning wrong. You can do cooperative learning wrong. So just because some people are misusing a model doesn't mean the model's bad.
Right. Spend a lot of time defending that. I know. I've seen you post that often.
Yeah, it's sort of part of my life. It's like, yeah, you've seen a bad example of the flipped classroom. I mean, even at the school where we pioneered this, we did it bad because we didn't know nobody to tell us how to do it. We were making it up as we went, right? And so it got a bit of a bad reputation in our own school, and then teachers would say, "Oh, that doesn't work." It's like, well, wait, give us some time to iterate and make this better, and we did. But then some of the perceptions were still there that it didn't work very well. So, you know, it is what it is there, but.
And I think that's important, John, to say that you were experimenting and learning as you went along, and you were able to fail, and you were able to learn that you were failing, and accept that you're going to fail and learn from it is a big part of being a professional educator, and having your administration let you fail.
Yeah, and actually that's a very good point. The administration was amazing. They were willing to help us. They were willing to just let us try, and that's such an important thing, to allow teachers to try and make mistakes, get messy, and in the long run, it's going to be best for kids. And so I think we need to breed that sort of a culture in a school. That, you know, that's one of the other pillars. You know, that whole culture of learning is if the school can have that culture of innovation and allowing for mistakes, then it really can make this foster and happen more quickly. I know some teachers who are afraid to flip because they're afraid that, you know, they'll lose their job. I mean, I don't particularly like New York. In New York, there's, you know, a lot of their evaluative system is based on test scores, and if their kids go low in test scores, then they could lose their job. And so, you know, some are afraid to try to flip their class because they're afraid that they might see a dip because they might make mistakes. You know, and I get it, but you know, the good news is this is typically helping. So that's something that they're latching onto.
Yeah, it's something to add there, Kate. I was just thinking about John's point on test scores there and the immediate impact.
Well, we're fighting that right now in New Jersey with not letting test scores dictate teacher evaluations. It just went through the New Jersey legislation that the PARCC scores can't be used in this way. For now, for the next 3 years, but who knows, until they figure something else out, and then who knows how else they're going to get us. It's just been such a battle, and it's a shame because really what should be the focus of learning? Should it be what numbers are on a test? You know, that's where data has been taken too far, and data is not used the correct way to guide students.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's just a sad state of affairs. I don't know if it's, it isn't completely true. It isn't completely happening all over the world, though, Kate. Let me at least give you some encouragement that not all the world is doing this. Sadly, it is in America, though. And so I know most of your audience is in Mexico. I'm not sure if that test scores mania has hit Mexico yet. I hope not. So.
Yeah, I gotta put my pulse on the public education sector here. I don't have the answer though. But I know it's hitting people like Kate. I know I see Keith Hughes posting a lot, and he's in Buffalo, New York. So I'm sure a lot of what he's posting is about what's going on in New York.
Yeah.
And it does have an effect. I was thinking one thing. One paper I'm trying to put together is that my theory really is what I'm doing in my flip class isn't just affecting my students' learning this semester or next semester in the same content course, but I want to pull some data together on the long-term effects of being exposed to flipped learning at the beginning of their undergraduate degree, and if that's having an effect on the rest of their degree program. So that's my hypothesis, and I want to try to get some data together for that.
I'll give you one data point. I was with some Australian educators yesterday doing a workshop with them, and this teacher who'd been flipping for 2 or 3 years came up to me and says, "I just got this email, John. I got to show it to you." He'd got an email from a former student who's at the university, and he says, "Oh, flipped has so helped me prepare for my university classes. Some classes are flipped, but actually, the whole kind of but just the process of learning was so powerful in the flipped classroom in basically my high school that it really prepared me for university." He had just got like
excellent.
While I was doing the presentation, he says, "I got to show you this." So it was very kind of timely, and so it is helping our students. I believe. Not do I have like legitimate action research, whatever? No, I don't. But a lot of anecdotal stories. But it'd be great to have some kind of a study on some of those things.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to do. Hopefully this semester. Obviously, I won't have it ready for FlipCon in July, but I'm going to go back and pull data on my students from 2.5 years ago. I have some videos of them actually explaining how they like flip class. They're in Spanish. I'm trying to get some English ones, but I want to go back and see how they're doing against the control group that weren't the students with myself. Obviously, there's a bazillion other factors in there. It's taking class with Ken versus not taking class with Ken.
Yeah.
I want to dig something out there. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is for professional educator. John kind of mentioned it where you were the only people there doing it. It created friction with other staff, and how to handle that, because I've had it happen for sure, where your students want all classes to be flipped and their other teachers aren't, and so on.
I don't know how to do that. We weren't very good at that. I wish we could give you the magic bullet. I think part of we eventually became kind of incognito and didn't talk about it much because we were starting to get a lot of attention, and so. But we just started to help people. I think good teaching is about relationships, and I think good staffs are about relationships. Right. And so I think I think it did start it to work. After a time, we had some teachers who then began to come to us for some help, but we tried to just say, hey, this is working for us, and we didn't try and push it necessarily. I mean, there's one funny story, I'll tell you. We had one teacher who, at first we didn't call it the flipped classroom, right? We called it something else. We called it reverse learning, or we called it pre-vodcasting. Not a very good term. Not very catchy. But, and so we were doing this, and so it went by a different name when we first did this. And then about 2 years later, this one of these math teachers in our department, or in our school, she came up, hey, John and Aaron, I've heard about this idea of the flipped classroom. Have you heard about this idea? Have you ever heard about it? She had no idea, right? That it was our idea, and that the term flipped had been attached to our what we were doing, and so then she got help and she started to flip her class. But it was just odd that here was this teacher who was in this group that didn't like what we were doing, and then all of a sudden discovered it on some blog post on the internet, and
right.
said, "Oh, we should learn what this is." It's like.
It reminds you of those staff meetings you have where you have a great idea, you present it, nobody likes it, then about a half hour later your boss comes up with this great idea, which is basically the same idea. And you
now everybody likes it.
Great idea, boss. Let's go with that.
I don't know. What is it like? Are people just so jaded's the wrong word, but just biased to things that are like around them, or blind to what's around them? Like I just feel like so often we look for things outside of us when there really are opportunities right next door, right within the same school building. Like,
that's
not
such a good
always have
point.
to go elsewhere to seek it. It's great. Trust me, I love Twitter and I love Edmodo, and the people I've connected with you guys. But at the same time, too, there's powerful connections to be had within the building if we're willing to have our doors open and willing to embrace it.
Right.
You know, something I saw, I went through a really innovative school here in Australia, Northern Beaches Christian School. It's got some awesome stuff. But one thing I just was impressed with is they've just redone their building. And, you know, all the doors, it's glass. So the learning is visible. So the walls are glass. And so that it's more visible. And one thing that the principal there, Stephen Harris, told me, he says, as he's walked and he's visited schools around the world, particularly, he says, the U.S. schools, you can't see in.
Right.
You know, so we're in these closed doors, and even some of the, so he's redesigning the learning spaces so that it makes learning more visible and more open. He's actually, all of his classes are team taught by teachers, so the classes are twice as big. So Kate, imagine your class, whatever you got, 30 kids, you got 60 now, but there's 2 of you. So keep that in mind, and there's 2 of you. Or actually, some have classes of 90 when they've got 3 teachers in this big space, and then, you know, some teachers are doing tutorials. It was just fascinating. Some teachers, you know, with small groups, and some are doing some whole group stuff, and they're kind of in this one big open space, and they're working together. There's a lot of video going on. They're doing a lot of elements of the flipped classroom, a lot of project-based stuff happening, but it was kind of a whole different model of education besides, you know, 30 kids in a room with a closed door.
Oh, I would love to see what that looked like. I bet it was noisy, though, too.
No, actually, they've redesigned some of that spaces. Well, the kids are working quietly. They've got their own devices, but they've actually thought this whole through from an architectural perspective. Is they've put noise-dampening things in the room. I'm not sitting in your room, and you've got concrete walls. I can see them behind you. Those reflect sound. So they've had to think this whole thing through, and so. Yeah, it's noisier-ish, but they've had to think this through, so they've actually architecturally designed it so that it doesn't. I mean, it is still noisy in some senses, but it isn't. I mean, they've thought it through.
Now, what about the schedule? Because I find not only do we compartmentalize ourselves in our own classrooms, but scheduling is so I can't even say it.
Compartmentalized.
Thank you.
There you go.
Just lost it. You know, I teach in a district. Our schedule is 8 periods a day, 43 minutes a day. No rotation, no nothing. Everybody's got their set little course that they follow, their routine, their schedule. So in order to deviate from that, it is exceptionally difficult. So if I want to collaborate with another class or team teach, it's impossible because none of us are really on the same, you know.
They've thought about that too, and that's part of the gig.
Okay, where's this?
If you want to move to Australia, you probably have a job. So it's in Sydney, so north of Sydney. It's a beautiful place, and actually they're building this brand new facility too. Got a tour of that. Oh my word! It's the every dreams school you've always wanted. So flip class teachers out there, you know, email me or
you're listening,
DM me
April. You're listening, April. I'll send you this.
If you want to go work at the ideal school in the world, this place is awesome. And you know, I think they're actually hiring ready for next year. So they started in January or something, right? Because of down under thing.
And so we're almost up on time, but I wanted to point out this is networking. I mean, John was saying this about the building space, and I'm sitting here putting a bookmark on this. I need to show this to people later. And I see Kate's face lighting up, being excited, and just these random conversations that sometimes we have at conferences or when we're online talking to each other or seeing someone's blog post really opens up our eyes to different ideas. And I could see Kate light up, and I was putting some bookmarks down here to take a look at this later.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find that school, Northern Beaches Christian School. It's well known in actually all over the world. They've done a lot of innovative stuff. So
that's excellent. Well, I want to say thank you for coming and taking some time out of your schedule, John, and have an excellent, safe trip home. Anything you want to close up on before we close up this chat?
Yeah, I would just encourage your people who are listening to this to take action on this. It's great to listen to a great conversation, but what could you actually do? And so my encouragement to you who's out there watching this, that go connect with the person next door. Figure out how to make that work. Or if that's not possible, reach out through some kind of social media and find a like group. You know, one really group for Flip Classroom is flipclassroom.org, where there's 25,000 people, but 25,000 is too big a group, but there's small groups in the group, right? So if you want to join the group, it's just for history teachers or just for mathematics teachers or just for just anatomy and physiology teachers. So I encourage you to go to flipclassroom.org and get into a group.
And that's excellent. Actually, I'm not active enough there, John, but someone just reached out to me last week that she found my posts on flipclassroom.org and contacted me here in Mexico. So it does work. And Kate?
Yeah, you never know what's around you for a network, and my experience has been trying to build a network at home, and then having branched out to Twitter and to the different conferences and stuff, to now bring that back home too. So it's not just I got out of my room and I'm doing things elsewhere, but it is that action piece of bringing it back and sharing it. I'm sitting in my classroom here on a Friday at the bell is rung and people can scoot, but yet here I am, making sure we're staying connected and always learning. So
excellent. And so I want to leave that with thank you both so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
Hanging out with me. Even if this wasn't recorded, I got a whole bunch out of it. But it is recorded. I can see I remember to record this. So I'll wrap this session up for today. Thank you. For anyone who wants to join us any other week, get a hold of me and I'll dial you into this chat, no matter whether with John or Kate or with anyone else. And have an excellent weekend, everyone.
Nice chatting with everybody.
All right.